I have a special mind-reading ability. I can hear the inner voices of those who do not love me. Yet on the eve of my wedding, I suddenly heard my fiancé's inner voice. If he tries to hijack the wedding tomorrow, wouldn't wearing high heels make it hard to run away? I said nothing, and the very next day, I decisively boarded an international flight. That wedding eventually became the laughingstock of the entire town. The bride and groom both fled. Chapter 1. I've always possessed this peculiar mind-reading talent. I can hear the inner voices of those who don't love me. Because of this gift, I can effortlessly tell when someone's affection for me is insincere. It allows me to quickly distance myself from superficial friends and remain unmoved even by the heartfelt confession of a longtime crush. Even when buying durians, I can listen to the vendor's inner voices to pick the one with the richest, sweetest flesh. Every single word they whisper in their hearts is crystal clear to me. To avoid an overwhelming clamor in my ears, I even steer clear of making eye contact with strangers in daily life. But when I first met Willow, the entire world went silent, leaving only the clear sound of our conversation. "Hello, may I get to know you?" There was no inner voice. When our eyes met, I couldn't read any thoughts from Willow. "Hello." During the time Willow pursued me, the voices in my ears were simple and pure. I believed that she loved me, so we fell in love, dated, and eventually discussed marriage. For 2 whole years, I never once heard her inner voice. Yet on the eve of our wedding, I suddenly began to hear Willow's inner voice. Because of the wedding, Willow had been exceptionally busy lately. She comes from a well-to-do family and has already successfully taken over her parents' legacy, independently managing the Liu family's financial company. With all the pre-wedding arrangements piling up, especially over the past 2 months, we hardly had any time together. I have my own career, and I equally respect Willow's pursuits. Thus, during this period, our meetings were few and far between. But today, while finalizing the outfits, thinking that this rare moment together might bring us closer, my heart filled with sweetness. When I arrived at the studio on time, she had already been there, trying on shoes. After exchanging a few instructions with the staff, she picked up her phone and walked out while talking, her tone laced with soothing reassurance. I understood her busyness. Running a company isn't easy, especially when the Liu family has more than one heir. We exchanged a knowing glance. Then, all of a sudden, I heard Willow's inner voice. "Makoto, if you're planning a wedding hijacking tomorrow, you should wear sneakers so you can run easier." Makoto, wedding hijacking. Stunned, I froze and stared intently at her lips, confirming that it was indeed her inner voice. For a moment, I didn't know how to react. Even though it was a sweltering summer day outside, a chill instantly spread through every part of me, leaving me immobile. I could hear her inner voice now, and its meaning was all too clear. Chapter 2. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed a staff member not far away, following her orders, tucking a pair of lightweight sneakers into the wedding attire. Willow nodded at me and raised her leg, as if preparing to step out. That was our unspoken understanding. She must have had something important to attend to, but the words I'd just heard never lie. I've never misinterpreted them. My body almost moved on its own accord, and in disbelief, I hurriedly caught up and called out, "Willow." I was eager to read more of her inner voice, to know exactly what the woman bearing the title of my fiancé was thinking. Why, on the eve of the wedding, had she suddenly changed her mind? My call made Willow's retreating steps falter for just a moment. She turned around in haste, offered a couple of brief explanations, and then instructed the driver to hit the accelerator and drive off. "Sorry, there's an urgent matter with a client, I need to rush over." She was lying. In truth, what she was really thinking was, from the sound on the phone, it's obvious Makoto is angry. If I don't smooth things over, he'll stop me from coming home tonight. I've never been one to dwell on inner turmoil. Rather than overthink, I decided to take action. I quickly found an excuse to summon Willow's secretary privately, using my mind-reading skills to glean more information. His name was Makoto. He was Willow's true love. Makoto was the illegitimate son of the Ito family. Mrs. Ito had never acknowledged him, leaving him perpetually in an awkward limbo. Unfortunately, the elders of the Liu family had a knack for breaking up lovebirds. Makoto, with his pride too fragile to bear humiliation, abandoned Willow and fled, leaving no trace. In the first place, Willow's love at first sight for me was merely because there was a subtle resemblance between my features and Makoto's. Now that the true one had returned, she clearly no longer needed me as a substitute. Moreover, Makoto's return coincided perfectly with the past 2 months when Willow had been overwhelmingly busy. Everything fit together seamlessly. Such a story inevitably left me shaking my head in exasperated amusement. I never expected that such a cliched, melodramatic, substitute romance trope could be applied to my own life. Makoto intended to use a wedding hijacking as a means to assert his claim on Willow, and Willow needed this very occasion to demonstrate her unwavering love for Makoto, to placate her irate partner, and to coerce the Liu family into recognizing him. And I, along with this meticulously arranged wedding, turned out to be nothing but a pawn in their elaborate game. This world is nothing but one giant, absurd CEO romance. To be honest, it was so maddening that I couldn't help but let out a curse. That night, the lights in my house were still on, even though the wedding was scheduled for the very next day. I, busy packing my luggage, had not a moment's respite. 2 hours ago, I had already booked a first-class seat on a flight overseas. Since everything has gone mad, I might as well join in. Chapter 3. If Willow can have her wedding snatched by Makoto, then naturally I can reciprocate by pulling off a vanishing act and escaping the wedding. Fortunately, my family had long been residing overseas, so this wedding didn't involve the hassle of hosting distant relatives and friends. Only my close friends from back home were invited. We had originally planned that since our parents had already met at the engagement, holding a second ceremony abroad would spare our guests the inconvenience of language barriers. In the end, this arrangement made it all too convenient for me to skip out. I briefly shared my plan with my childhood friend, David. He silently took the packing box from my hand, his expression grave, unable to read his inner voice and noticing his odd reaction. I had to ask out loud, "David, are you going to stop me?" David rolled his eyes and retorted irritably, "You idiot. I got you a urea sack, it's built tough." I thought to myself, damn, I almost forgot that David's family is in the agrochemical business. On the wedding day, dressed in our reception suits, Willow and I greeted the guests arriving from afar. This time, however, Willow's inner voice was so loud it nearly gave me a headache. "Has Makoto arrived? I can finally be with Makoto." 3 years, I've waited 3 years for Makoto Ito. At last, I'm going to become Mrs. Ito. With this wedding hijacking, Makoto will believe in the steadfastness of my heart, right? I shuddered and frowned at Willow several times as her inner monologue echoed in my ears. Yet outwardly, she remained as gentle and poised as ever, expressing concern for me. "George, you don't look so good. Why don't you head to the lounge to rest? I'll take care of the guests outside. Join the ceremony when it's time." That was fine by me. In fact, it was about time I found an excuse to make my exit. I agreed, and just as I was about to swap my suit for casual clothes, I happened to run into Makoto by the door. Thanks to our similar looks and my mind-reading ability, I recognized him almost instantly. I grabbed David by the sleeve. He was clearly ready to pounce on the mistress, and feigned ignorance, saying, "You're one of my beloved's friends, aren't you? Get inside quickly, our wedding starts in a few hours." Makoto's smile vanished abruptly, as if he were displeased by my familiar reference to Willow. His tone then turned sardonic. "Mr. Wong, I'm sorry, but today our outfits are too similar. If an uninformed bystander saw this, might they think I'm the groom?" At that very moment, Makoto's cocky inner voice echoed in my ears. "Laugh all you want. In 3 hours, your groom will be skipping the wedding for me. Will you still be laughing then?" I kept smiling and shook my head dismissively. "Aren't all suits the same?" As I waved a waiter over to escort him inside, I heard his inner voice again. "Idiot. I've already made it clear. I hope you realize I'm here to stir up trouble." Just after we brushed past each other, David couldn't help but mutter, "Look at that haughty look on his face. I just can't stand it." I couldn't disagree. He's treating me like a joke. After all, Willow was ready to have her wedding snatched by him. In the end, he'll not only gain the title of a lover finally united with his beloved but also force the Liu family to acknowledge his true identity right before my eyes. The wedding venue wasn't far from the airport, and as I sat in the departure lounge, the ceremony hadn't even begun. I stared at the time on my phone, eagerly awaiting the start of this farce. BZZ, BZZ, BZZ. The phone vibrated non-stop as David excitedly flooded my messages with live updates. "George, they really pulled it off. They really snatched the wedding. Damn, cheating and yet acting like Cinderella and her prince, absolutely shameless." With only 5 minutes until the ceremony officially began, David sent me a video of the wedding in progress. According to the schedule, after I had taken the stage and the MC had recited a sappy, overly sentimental love story, the bride was supposed to make her entrance. But to help Makoto hijack the wedding, Willow had already altered the program with me. She would go on stage first, and I would follow. She intended to force Makoto to make his move at this critical moment, not knowing that it was exactly what I wanted. Makoto deliberately donned the same reception suit as the groom and swiftly rushed onto the stage, snatching the microphone from the MC. Despite the murmurs from the audience, he unabashedly declared his love, his bold display bringing tears to Willow's eyes. "Willow, will you come with me?" The guests erupted in an uproar. Taking the bride away on the wedding day was nothing short of a blatant wedding snatch. What was most damning was that Willow, with a look of heartfelt emotion, nodded in agreement, walked to Makoto's side, interlocking her fingers with his and leaning on his shoulder like a little bird. I do. Chapter 4. Makoto's inflated vanity was completely gratified. He even had the nerve to deliver an acceptance speech directed at the groom, separated from him by a large door, basically proclaiming, "I know you're fond of Willow, but Willow's true love is me. I hope you'll make way for us." In the video, Willow was clad in a simple, escape-friendly wedding dress paired with sneakers that clashed wildly with her attire, while Makoto, clutching the microphone, couldn't hide the smug satisfaction written all over his face. Makoto was undoubtedly eager to see my dejected expression, and had even rehearsed in his mind exactly what he'd say to comfort me. "I hope, Mr. Wong, that you'll help bring our love story to fruition, Mr. Wong." At that moment, the atmosphere suddenly turned awkward. After all, without the humiliated party present, this whole farce had become nothing more than a clownish spectacle. "Mr. Wong. Mr. Wong." Makoto shouted repeatedly with no response until the protocol officer swung open a large door. Behind it, there was no one, only the casually discarded boutonniere, a symbol of the groom's mysterious absence. The crowd erupted into chatter, and someone shouted, "Damn, has the groom just skipped the wedding?" In the quiet waiting lounge, I suddenly burst out laughing. If fate demands it, then so be it. After all, many of the guests are people I know. If I bail on the wedding and leave them high and dry, that's on me. Might as well give them a free show of this absurdity. I couldn't help but shake my head and laugh. Just then, the big screen flashed a block of text and an image in bold red, size 2, declaring, "Wedding escape statement. Due to Willow's affair with that other man, Makoto, I have decided to skip the wedding. Consider it a treat for your amusement. And I hope that from now on you'll stay locked down and never go out causing trouble for anyone else." Beneath the text, recent intimate photos of Willow and Makoto were thoughtfully attached. "Buzz, David sent me a message. Mission accomplished." After seeing that, I also posted the same statement on WeChat, this being the final message from my account. The people on site went into an uproar. Who now has the time to ridicule me? The even bigger joke was staring them in the face. Aren't Willow and Makoto standing on stage, hand in hand, with the groom missing? Who would care whether Willow and Makoto run away or not? Makoto's earlier self-indulgent outpouring of love on stage, juxtaposed against the glaring red cheating emblazoned on the big screen, only made him look more ridiculous. What love story? It's nothing but a flimsy cover-up for infidelity and betrayal. David, utterly excited by the spectacle, sent me another video 2 minutes later. In it, no one paid any attention to the two idiots standing dumbfounded on stage, while the crowd frantically searched for my whereabouts. Where's George? Where's Mr. Wong? Where's the groom? His phone isn't working. Has anyone tried checking the lounge? Check the changing room, the top floor, everywhere. Why is everyone just standing around? Get moving, get moving. Even the perpetually dour Liu family parents hastily got up, instructing the staff to locate me, and soon the guests were all on the move. No one cared about the two stranded on stage. Even the MC was called off. Willow and Makoto stood there awkwardly, exchanging bewildered glances like monkeys forced on display in public, utterly at a loss. What's even funnier is that the audience was busy searching for me, the missing groom, without a care in the world for whether Willow and Makoto would make a run for it. The romantic, adrenaline-fueled wedding escape scene that they had envisioned was thrown into utter chaos by my sudden disappearance, comparable to a bunch of elderly folks scrambling for free eggs at the supermarket door. The two of them just stood there on stage. With this wedding, whether they run away or not makes no difference. If they run, no one will care. If they don't, no one will care either. Chapter 5. Time was nearly up, so I used another WeChat account to send David a message that I was about to board, and I briefly informed my parents of the situation, warning them not to divulge any of my personal details. I then switched my phone to airplane mode. Meanwhile, David settled comfortably in first class, enjoying over a dozen hours of flight. No sooner had I landed than David's messages began pouring in frantically. It looked like the aftermath of this affair was turning out to be wildly entertaining. In fact, barely after my first reply, David couldn't hold back and immediately sent me a voice message. "Ha ha ha ha. George, that move of yours was just too ruthless. You have no idea. Over here in City A everything's in chaos." It wasn't just the relatives and friends from the Liu family, many of whom are prominent figures. Since you skipped the wedding, they are in complete chaos over there. Those two idiots stood on stage for a full 10 minutes without anyone intervening, and in the end, they left on their own. It was so embarrassing. You could practically dig a swimming pool with your toes. Check the trending topics now. That video is topping the charts. Netizens are calling those two the reversed groom and reversed bride. And those bastards even chased you all the way to your villa. They were so furious, stomping at the door. They rang your doorbell like it was a telegraph. Beep, beep, beep. I was just about to leave when she chased after me, still having the nerve to ask where you were. I told her you'd gone abroad and nothing more. It had me in stitches. Don't even mention that you run fast in sneakers. Just from the sound of David's uncontrollable laughter, I could tell just how thoroughly Willow was being tormented by the whole affair. The wedding wasn't even successfully hijacked. Her disgrace was entirely self-inflicted. Everyone was laughing at her, yet she was the one laughing the loudest herself. I wasn't really surprised by Willow's reaction. She dared to act that way because she was convinced that, for the sake of preserving the dignity of both the Liu and the Wang families, I wouldn't let things escalate any further. In the end, having been the subject of a wedding snatch, I could only swallow my bitter defeat in silence. After all, with the Wang family's assets overseas, the Liu family wouldn't be too badly affected. Besides, it gave me the chance to force the Liu family parents to finally acknowledge Makoto as their son-in-law. With things having spiraled so far, not admitting him in front of so many guests would simply be too shameful. But Willow never expected that I would skip the wedding. I completely tore away that cover-up and thrust it right into the faces of her and Makoto, utterly disgusted with them. Let them be. Love is meant to be enjoyed, but once it comes to marriage, it turns into merely enduring. After all, the life of Cinderella and her prince isn't just about the wedding day. What follows is the daily grind of endless chores and banalities. When you're down a dead end, it's best to turn back in time. Dodging an unhappy marriage, I was ready to celebrate with firecrackers. My parents had settled abroad years ago, where the dating scene is refreshingly open and free-spirited. Moreover, neither Willow nor I had even registered our marriage. Legally speaking, we weren't even husband and wife. So when I announced my return, my parents responded immediately. In fact, as soon as I got off the plane, someone was already arranged to pick me up. As I climbed into the car, David was still excitedly recounting the latest developments. The wedding eventually fizzled out, after the guests left in small groups. Only a few staff members remained. Since our families are on good terms with the Lius, some stayed behind to calm down an exceedingly unstable Liu lady. Liu lady was so furious that she even slapped Willow. Frankly, she had it coming. Who doesn't know that you helped her climb the social ladder for Willow's sake, and that Makoto, an illegitimate child, pulled off this shameless act of wedding snatching as a way to repay ingratitude? The Liu family themselves have lost face. Old Mr. Liu didn't even spare Makoto a glance, he just left immediately. Only Makoto remained, awkwardly fumbling as if he didn't know where to put his hands. When I was leaving, I even saw Makoto, red-eyed, clinging to Willow as they tried to hold the wedding together. I bet he felt that his own reputation was utterly ruined. I scoffed. Those who insult others often end up being insulted themselves. I'll be waiting for them to actually hold a wedding someday. If they do, I promise I'll sincerely congratulate them. I believe Willow will understand that sooner rather than later. I met Willow at a charity gala. Although the Wang family's assets had already been transferred overseas, both my parents and I hail from City A, and with my elderly parents, long international flights can be quite taxing. That time when I returned, it was partly for business, partly to trace my roots. I never expected to encounter the girl who fancied herself my destined partner. Back then, Willow called out to me while holding a wine glass. Her smile was radiant, and every graceful gesture exuded elegance. Thanks to my mind-reading ability, I usually refrained from initiating conversation in such public settings unless absolutely necessary. The clamor of high society is just too overwhelming. When Willow stopped me, the irritation on my face was still evident. Yet, strangely enough, I couldn't hear any inner voice from her. Perhaps because it was too quiet, I gradually found the patience to start talking with her. Later, when she confessed her feelings, she became so bashful that she didn't know what to do with her hands. The one holding the rose trembled slightly as she said, "George, we will be together forever." We locked eyes, but I couldn't read any inner voice from her. So, I nodded, trusting Willow's promise and agreeing to stay in the country to marry her. I never doubted the promise in that moment. But promises only hold true when love is genuine. In my eyes, the love story between Makoto and Willow was nothing more than a tale of youthful unrequited love. Makoto might not be as perfect as Willow imagines, and Willow might not love Makoto as deeply as she believes. After all, love is most moving when it is unfulfilled. Chapter 6. Half a month later, just after finishing Professor Parsons' design class, I received a call from David. "Didn't you get that wedding invitation from those bastards a few days ago?" When I got there today, I thought some village was hosting a communal feast. It wasn't nearly as lively as the time I went north for that pork stew. David, clearly a gossip journalist on the front lines, rambled on about that melodramatic wedding. Old Man Liu didn't show up at all, and hardly anyone attended. "This wedding can't compare to yours back in the day." The ceremony was held in a secondary hall, and only Mrs. Liu showed up, wearing a sullen look as she coldly finished her change of address tea. Forget about handing out red envelopes. She didn't even properly address her son-in-law, still calling him Mr. Ito. During the speeches on stage, they even had him scold Mr. Ito to behave, told him to be well-mannered and know decency and shame. Ha ha ha. You should hear how the older generation, with all their cultured flair, can really lay into someone. Makoto got so angry he ended up throwing Willow's bouquet. which forced her to juggle soothing both her mother and her husband. I nearly laughed myself into a fit. Honestly, that was hardly surprising, given Mrs. Lu's nature. Not holding the wedding would have been her usual style, but she couldn't resist Makoto whispering sweet nothings into her daughter's ear. So she had no choice but to attend while keeping her anger in check. Yet, Makoto, who isn't even married yet, managed to offend his mother-in-law. Can he really expect any good days ahead? I also heard Makoto's been stuffing his cronies into Willow's company lately. He's enjoying himself, once married. Even the Ito side acknowledged his identity, and his own business is booming. Talk about having the shade of a big tree to lean on. I still remember how hard you worked to pull resources for Willow, and now Makoto is reaping all the benefits. It leaves me seething with envy. I kept thumbing through project files while chatting with David on speakerphone. I haven't come out short either. I made a pretty penny in all this. But Willow's life isn't exactly a bed of roses either. She might have operational control, but the real decision-making power still lies with her father. They can't have the Lu group end up taking the Ito name, can they? Besides, the Lu family isn't just made up of one young person. It's hard to say for sure, but I know how driven Willow is when it comes to her career. The company isn't run solely by her, so I suspect Makoto is playing the classic act first, explain later card. Thanks to that wedding, our domestic partners have caught wind of the feud between Willow and me and have let slip a few tidbits. For instance, the Lu family even promoted Willow's cousin, clearly ramping up the pressure. Between love and business, I figure Willow is caught in a real bind. David clearly wasn't too pleased with my remarks. What do you mean by that? Have you gone abroad to become a monk? Are you out there clattering your prayer beads all over your face? Suddenly turning soft-hearted. Now you feel sorry for her suffering, so is your next move going to be to send her some warmth? Chapter 7. I raised my brows with a wry smile. No warm fuzzies here, I was thinking. Maybe I can cash in on this opportunity. Haha. I always thought you were a lovesick fool. Turns out you're a capitalist. But I never expected that 2 months later I'd receive a call from Willow. George. After all this time, hearing her voice suddenly sent a shiver down my spine. Willow. Miss Miller. No wonder the professor never bothered to give me the client's Chinese name, always saying it was just an old acquaintance. So it's you. As for Willow managing to find me, my reaction was surprisingly indifferent. After all, I'm abroad, not at a funeral. The domestic and international circles are that small, and in business there are no real barriers. If Willow wants to get in touch, it's only a minor inconvenience. George. Her hesitant, stuttering tone grated on me, and inwardly I rolled my eyes. What are you going on about? I've got no lingering affections to rekindle with a cheating ex. If I had to curse her ancestors for 18 generations, that'd already be more than generous. I'm only greeting you out of courtesy. Since you're the client, I cut her off coolly. If there's nothing else, I'd better go and introduce this project to Mr. Lu. Clearly still lost in her own emotions, Willow tried to dredge up the past. George, I'm truly sorry about everything back then. I know I hurt you, so much so that you ran off, skipped the wedding, and fled abroad. I'm sorry. I really owe you an apology. I fell silent for a moment and sighed. Willow, have you gotten what you wanted? A long silence stretched over the line, and then her voice came back. Tired. I don't know. Makoto isn't the same as he used to be. He's changed so much that I'm starting to wonder if he's even the Makoto I once loved. Sorry. I know I shouldn't be disturbing your life, but I just felt like talking. Tonight, I attended a cocktail party and suddenly remembered the days when we used to fight side by side. I snorted dismissively, not wanting to continue what had been a relatively civil conversation. If Mrs. Ito finds out that you and I are still in touch, it won't be proper. Lisa, come over here. Thanks for helping me introduce this project to Mr. Lu. I've got other matters to attend to. Excuse me. No matter how heart-pounding a romance once was, over time it all grows dull. The pearl powder you once despised turns out, once lost, to be an invaluable glowing gem. No matter how much one is loved, one always yearns for the love that was never attained. Regarding Willow's confession, all I could think was, serves her right. I handed all follow-up work on the project over to my assistant, Lisa. Occasionally, if something was unclear, I'd offer guidance, but I made every effort to avoid direct contact with Willow. I knew exactly what she was scheming, but when it comes to betrayal, once you've given someone a first chance, there's no room for a second. Lisa went back to the country on my behalf and successfully secured the project. Along with it, she brought another piece of news. Miss Lu asked me to tell you that she's divorced. When Makoto began stuffing his cronies into the company, I had already had a vague premonition. I just never expected it to come so soon. Even when I messaged David, he was surprised. I only just heard about it too. How come your news is so sharp? I smirked. She reconnected with me a while back because of the project. She specifically had my assistant relay this to me. David clicked his tongue a couple of times before continuing. Everyone can see her true intentions, but how is it that this guy is so relentless? Does he really think you're just his spare? Disgusting. Do you know why they got divorced? Makoto had Willow wrapped around his finger. He was already married overseas, to a rich foreign woman, and only came back after losing a lawsuit against his stepson. When Aunt Lou found out, she was so furious her hands were trembling, and without a word, she slapped a photo of Willow right onto her face. You should have seen it. Willow's face turned so red you could fry an egg on it. After getting married, his sleazy antics were hardly few, and his relationship with Willow steadily cooled off. Now that everything's come to light, Willow had someone draft the divorce papers the very next day, and now it's over so decisively. I remember how, back then, Willow was even willing to give up her entire fortune just to be with him. It's only been a year since they married, and now they're divorced. Thinking back on her former attitude, she must now think she was utterly foolish. I suddenly recalled when Willow had mentioned to me that Makoto has changed. It was all just ridiculously funny. Chapter 8. Makoto perhaps hasn't changed at all, it's just that he no longer lives up to Willow's expectations. Once the thrill wears off, true affection gradually emerges. Apart from our business dealings, Willow and I have lost all contact. I even deliberately ignore her emails and friend requests. She's adept at falling in love with an idealized perfection. Once it was Makoto, and now it's mostly me. Let her be. I've built a whole new life for myself. As for Willow, to me she's nothing more than an old, insignificant memory. It wasn't until David was preparing to get married that, after many years, I returned to a city. Accompanying me was my daughter, Anna. My wife, a foreigner, was on an Antarctic research expedition at the time, or else she would have joined me for the wedding. After chatting with David, Anna mentioned that she wanted to play at the children's amusement park in a nearby mall. Knowing that she didn't have any playmates here, I nodded and took her along. Anna was clearly excited. She practically ran the entire way, her boundless energy leaving me breathless as I struggled to keep up. Before I knew it, she collided with someone around a corner. I hurried after her to check on her and to apologize. Sorry, kids don't know any better. Are you hurt, George? Came a surprised and strangely familiar voice. I looked up and, after a careful glance, recognized her. It was Willow. I quickly realized that this mall was likely under the Liu family's umbrella, so her presence wasn't unusual. But the Willow before me was different, her posture and demeanor, so unlike the vibrant, spirited woman I once knew, now appeared haggard and worn out. A hint of pleasant surprise softened her features as she smiled slightly. Long time no see. This is my daughter, Anna. We exchanged a look, but this time I heard no inner voice from her. I'd heard you got married, but I never expected your daughter to be so grown up, she continued. Before I could reply, Anna piped up. Sorry, ma'am, I bumped into you. Willow's expression faltered for a moment. Then she reached out and gently patted Anna's head. Bending down with a smile, she spoke warmly to Anna. It's all right, Anna. Just remember not to run so fast next time. Manager Wang, why don't you take Anna over to the children's playground over there? George, there's a new coffee shop on the second floor. How about catching up over some Robusta, the coffee you used to love? I nodded and exchanged a few words with Anna. Before returning, David's ever-talkative nature had already filled me in on almost everything about Willow's current state. Makoto's betrayal had hit her hard, and the Liu family had shifted their support to her cousin. Now, the once celebrated darling of the Liu clan had become a marginal figure. Love was gone, her career in ruins, and though she should be in the prime of her life, a heavy, gloomy aura now surrounded her. Chapter 9. Hello. 1 cup of Robusta. 1 cup of Kangbalan. Thank you. No. Instead, please change the Robusta to a Vienna. Willow asked me with a smile. Changed your taste? I remember you used to dislike these overly sweet coffees. I shook my head and replied. My wife always says that Robusta packs too much caffeine. It hurts the stomach if you drink too much, so she always swaps it for a Vienna. Over time, I've come to enjoy the sweeter flavor. Not bad. I saw your wedding scene. It was very romantic. Was it at that famous Swiss castle? I happened to be on a business trip at the time, so I managed to take a quick look. The Liu family doesn't have any business in Switzerland. I didn't point that out. I simply laughed and exchanged casual pleasantries as ordinary friends. Would you mind accepting my friend request? I set my coffee cup down and, still smiling lightly, responded to Willow. Better not. I know what you're getting at. There's no need to dwell on it. To me, that's all in the past. After all, it was clearly you who lost face back then. I did love you, but I truly don't anymore. I've built a happy family, a loving partner, an adorable daughter, and someone living an entirely new life wouldn't want to rehash the mistakes of the past. Willow, what's lost is lost. Whether it's love or hate, none of it matters anymore. My nonchalant tone seemed to sting her. A slight redness filled Willow's eyes. When I went back to look for Anna, the manager was engrossed in reading a fairy tale book to her. Until I approached, Anna looked up and asked, Daddy, have you read The Little Prince? Even though the fox was so wonderful, Why did the little prince ultimately choose that rose? Because it was the one rose he had tenderly cared for, his one and only. Anna's gaze turned confused, and I smiled as I took her hand. When Anna's a little older, she'll understand what her father means. Beside us, Willow remained quiet. Only as we were leaving the mall did she hand Anna a brand new copy of The Little Prince. Through the car window, Willow and I exchanged a nod of farewell. At that moment, as our eyes met, I still couldn't read her inner voice. It was as if we were back at the very first time we met. The car slowly drove away, leaving the figure of an old acquaintance behind. While I held my daughter close, this was my final act of retribution, a gentle and dignified exit. From now on, memories would be our only means of meeting again, and I will replace Makoto, becoming the lover in Willow's life who was always just out of reach. In Willow's world, the unattainable lover isn't a torrential downpour but rather a lifelong, lingering dampness. She will forever be trapped in that moist existence, stirring up wild storms on every seemingly calm day. I once was a fox, and I was that red rose, but now I am merely a little prince whose journey has come to an end. My daughter, clutching her phone, tugged at me. Daddy, Mom wants to talk to you. Come on.